You're a parasite. You don't think you're the only poor tragic heroine. You're disgusting, you belly fucking woman. Your baby will be a parasite just like you. No, no. Don't wander around with such a big belly. My mother-in-law looked at me with a mean look and I felt dizzy. Is this what you say to a daughter-in-law who is carrying her grandchild in her belly? I was tired and sleepy after getting up before sunrise and cooking for 13 relatives, and my heart was torn apart by sadness and humiliation after being hurt by the terrible words from my mother-in-law. Taking advantage of my husband's absence, my mother-in-law and in-laws surrounded me from the morning and repeated negative words like I was clumsy and looked bad. Every time they did that, my 9-month pregnant belly got bloated and I couldn't help but worry about my baby. I'm sorry I'm such a weak mother. But I'll protect you. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down, but the relatives around me turned a blind eye to me. No one was worried about me or the baby in my belly. Feeling lonely and humiliated, Yoshima shouted out loud. What is this food? It's so awful. Did you make it? Don't put this on the table. It's embarrassing. He put the rice I had been making since yesterday in his mouth and spat it out. Then he mashed it with his chopsticks and threw it in the trash. How awful. I just stood there, stunned. Yoshima should know how much time I spent cooking. Why am I the only one being attacked like this? Here you go. Just make it again. Kima handed me a large plate and kicked me out of the room. I hated everything. I just wanted to get out of here. I didn't want to be hurt anymore. I couldn't bear this situation and told my husband in tears, and suddenly my husband grabbed my arm forcefully. Where are you planning to take me? I had no intention of returning to that room anymore. However, my husband opened the door to the room without paying any attention to me and said something unexpected. My name is Endo Shiori, 30 years old. I got married 3 years ago. I met my husband through an acquaintance and we dated for about 1.5 years before deciding to get married. When I went to greet my parents-in-law and Mayu for the first time, I greeted them with a smile. My mother-in-law is strict and has a strong personality. Although she is a little flashy, she quickly opened up and talked to me. It seems that the daily life of the family is that 2 women have sex and Mayu takes care of it. I had just lost my real father, so the atmosphere was very comfortable. Soon after we got married, Mayu was diagnosed with a disease and we were looking for a new home, so at my husband's strong request, we decided to live together at the family's house. Mayu had already left the family home to work for a large company in Tokyo, so there was plenty of room. Her husband was very upset by the sight of Gifu getting weaker, and to be honest, she didn't want to live with him, but she couldn't ignore her husband and look for a new house. A year later, Gifu died of illness. Since her mother-in-law was not familiar with government affairs, her husband had to handle the inheritance procedures on her behalf. As a result, she found out that her parents' savings and the remaining loan balance were over 10 million yen. Her mother-in-law, who was originally an elderly person, had repeatedly scolded Gifu about money, and when Gifu was healthy, she was able to spend money, but after Gifu became ill, she began to be careless as if she had lost her confidence. After Gifu passed away, her behavior accelerated even more, saying that now she could live freely, and started buying things she wanted without thinking about the consequences. Even worse things continued to happen. At the same time, Yoshimami and I started living together. Yoshimami's posts on social media went viral, and the situation caused a lot of trouble for the company, so she eventually couldn't bear the negative attention from those around her and quit her job and returned to her parents' house. However, Yoshima could not stop pretending to be rich on social media, and even though she had no income, she continued to post pictures of luxury brand items and restaurants, showing off her wealthy family home. She had created a situation where she could not back out of reality. Since returning to her parents' home, she has been living a luxurious life with only part-time work twice a week. Neither my mother-in-law nor Yoshima did anything, so I had to take care of everything on my own. Furthermore, neither of them contributed any money to our living expenses, so my husband and I had to cover the cost of living for 4 people with my husband's and my husband's salary, and he felt a lot of pressure about having to pay the remaining mortgage on our house. In addition to that, my mother-in-law and Yoshima's living expenses and retirement expenses. My husband worked too hard, thinking that he had to do something about it. He eventually developed depression. He decided to quit his job. However, my husband immediately asked to work part-time at his new company within his limits. Since the companies he had worked for were listed on the first section of the stock exchange, his salary was significantly reduced, but we decided to continue living together, encouraging each other and being grateful that we still had a place to work. My son is an elite of a top company, so I'm also getting rejected like this. My mother-in-law is bragging about my husband to the neighbors as usual. However, I can't let my mother-in-law live a luxurious life forever. I'm no longer a salaried employee of a listed company. When I tried to tell my mother-in-law that my husband had quit before my husband heard about it, she grabbed my arm. You don't have to tell your mother that I quit. If I tell you while looking at you, you'll probably panic and not believe me. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've always caused you, because Shiori might feel bad about it. My husband tried to keep my quitting a secret out of consideration for me. I understand. But I'm fine. So I answered with a smile. With Yoshima living with me, my husband quitting, and the dizzying changes in my life, I didn't notice the changes in my physical condition. By the way, when I went to the obstetrician's house, the baby I had been waiting for 5 months came to my stomach. My husband and I were happy, holding hands, but the reality was not so sweet. Pregnancy is not a disease. You're young, so you can do housework while working. My mother-in-law said this while glaring at me as I was resting, rubbing my stomach. It's a sunny day, and she seems to think that I and the baby are a nuisance. I'm not resting because I'm lazy, I was just resting because my stomach was bloated after cleaning up after my mother-in-law and mother-in-law had finished breakfast. It would be easier if they were more proactive in doing housework. I have to do housework while working. And it's terrible that I have to feel so bad. Tears well up in my eyes. My husband, who is in the next room, notices this and takes over the dishwashing. Then my mother-in-law said, "What kind of wife is she, making her working husband do such chores that don't earn money?" She pointed at me and repeated her negative words, saying that if you spoil your ninja skills, you won't have a healthy child. My husband and I continued to wash the dishes in silence. I retorted, but if I argued back here, my husband would be caught in the middle and would suffer. With that in mind, I bit my lip and continued to endure my mother-in-law's harsh attitude. As the first period of Gifu approached, we decided to call in a monk to perform a memorial service. As a wife of the head family, I had no experience and was full of anxiety about being able to perform a memorial service. I asked my mother-in-law how memorial services had been held in the past. She said, "Oh, as the wife of the eldest son, it's only natural that you should know that much. Many relatives will be coming and we'll also be inviting a monk, so we can't be rude at all." Quote. She didn't tell me anything and her cold gaze showed her obvious disgust for me, which scared me. I was at a loss, so I decided to ask my mother at home for advice. My mother is also an experienced wife of the eldest son who has been managing the family for decades. She answered all my questions accurately. How should I contact the temple? What things should I prepare for the little ones? She answered all my questions kindly and carefully. Thank you so much, Mom. I think I'll be able to perform the memorial service with this. By the way, how are you doing lately? Have you had any problems? I asked casually, thinking it was just a casual conversation. Then my mother said, "Actually, we've been getting a lot of door-to-door salesmen lately. They came to me many times to solicit me for exterior wall painting, singing that I was a special monitor and trying to force me into a contract, and I was in trouble, so I would be happy if they would just refuse me somehow, but I was 9 months pregnant and suffered from back pain and curiosity sitting. To be honest, it was hard to go to my mother's house by bus and train with my body. I'm sorry, Mom. I want to say it too, but right now my body is in pain and I want to help my kind and loving mother, but I can't do anything and I'm filled with sincere regret." When I hung up the phone, my mother-in-law walked over to me in a hurry. "Shiori-san, this time 13 relatives are planning to come, so please be careful. Please prepare the food and alcohol well. Oh, by the way, the food has to be homemade. Please prepare a lot of Japanese food and freshly cooked rice." Saying that, my mother-in-law handed me an envelope. I thought she was handing the money to the monk, but inside was a note with the relatives' preferences and disliked ingredients. Please read this memo carefully and have a good time. Don't embarrass me. My head is spinning. There's no way I can make all the dishes that are written in the notes. I guess I have to pay for the ingredients and the money to give to the priest. All I could think about was that piece of hair. As my body screamed, I was forced to prepare for the memorial service. My wife and I are going to the hospital today. We're going to my 3-person house and my husband's clinic. First, my 3-person house. When the doctor puts the echo on my stomach, both my husband and I smile. The doctor also said that I'm healthy, which was a relief. Next, will my husband be seen? The doctor also said that I'm fine now. There's no problem with returning to normal work. He said that, and my wife and I held hands and rejoiced. I was always haunted by financial anxiety with no end in sight. If my husband can work as a full-time employee again, I can give birth with peace of mind. Remembering the baby I saw in the third wife's echo earlier, I couldn't stop crying. I'm sure everything will be fine from now on. I felt like a bright future was just around the corner. Just then, on the day of the school day in Gifu, my heart was pushed to the bottom again. I woke up early and headed to the kitchen looking at the note my mother handed me. I prepared a large amount of the ingredients written on the note in advance, and the 3-pot cooking method was the same. Grilled fish also needs to be cooked quickly, so it won't fit in the number of minutes, so I was worried about the cooking method while I was doing the preparations. This is what it means to ask for a cat's help. Even in the midst of such a busy schedule, my mother-in-law and mother-in-law were having breakfast leisurely. They shook their hands and threw the plates into the sink with a clang. At the same time, they looked at my hands as if to check them out, and gave me a mean look. However, perhaps because my husband was nearby helping me, they left without saying anything. Ah. I sighed, finally relieved by the two of them, and the tension was released. Are you okay? Did someone say something? My husband looks worried about me. Yes, I'm okay. I'm feeling a little bloated, so I'll take breaks. I sit down and work at a moderate pace and make the food smoothly. Without my husband's help, it would have taken much longer, and I think it would have been a big physical burden. Especially the drinks that I finally got yesterday. I couldn't make so many trips back and forth as a pregnant woman, so I was right to ask my husband for advice. He will go to the bar right away and buy them for me, so it's okay. If you put them in the trunk, your mothers won't notice. Then I'll carry them later and put them in the refrigerator, so you don't have to worry about the bookmark. I'm sorry I made all the food. If I made it, it would be so bad that it would be obvious, I laughed self-deprecatingly. I'm very grateful that one of my worries has been reduced. My husband and I cooperated to set up the venue for the memorial service. With her big pregnant belly, she removed the altar and the guest room, set up a large table, and carried chopsticks, plates, and cups one after another. She had to pass through the living room between the kitchen and the Japanese-style room, and even though she didn't want to, she could see her mother-in-law and her mother-in-law drinking tea and laughing while watching TV. Every time I passed by them, I felt irritated and wondered why they didn't help at all. However, she busily continued to prepare without taking a breath, and it was almost time to welcome the monk. I'll go and pick up the monk for a bit. Don't push yourself. If there's anything missing, I'll help you when I get back. I waved goodbye, thanking my husband for being so kind and caring for me. When I returned to the kitchen, my mother-in-law and Tokumata were waiting for me with their arms folded. You're getting too cocky just because Takaaki is kind, aren't you? Normally, a wife can make about 13 servings by herself. And she even made Takaaki carry the table in the living room. You alone are enough for that. Don't be spoiled. My mother-in-law continued to throw harsh words at me as if she was denying everything about me. I'm sure they had been waiting for this moment. They believe that it is their husband who pays for their living expenses. So it is the husband who should never be upset. The moment the husband left, my mother-in-law and mother-in-law finally came to the kitchen, ready to take care of the main chapter. Hey, Mom. Are all pregnant women so lazy? Seriously, they're just resting all the time. Really? When I was young, I wasn't treated so well just because I was pregnant. They continue to say nasty things so that I can hear them as they watch me cook from a distance. I can't stand this strange gaze and the unpleasantness of the child. When I find a small mistake, I yell at her, "Oh dear, you messed up again." She laughed with me as she yelled at me, "You're such a useless daughter-in-law." After a while, the relatives arrived one after another and I politely exchanged greetings with each of them. My mother-in-law and my mother-in-law were talking about their recent situation with the relatives in a big, arrogant manner, but they were just bragging about how they were living a luxurious life without working, and they were arrogantly saying that the quality of their lives was poor and that they were using their money poorly, as if they were poor. They were concerned about me carrying beer bottles with a big belly, and they told me that it must be hard to carry something heavy with a big butt. There were many relatives who were willing to help me, saying that their aunties would take over for me and that I should take a rest, but my mother-in-law was slow to do anything and would refuse, saying that she couldn't do anything regardless of pregnancy. Moreover, if I even knocked over a glass, she was a really helpless daughter-in-law. Even just her big body was a nuisance, but she got stuck to me. When the relatives told me to calm down, the abusive language got worse. At first, my relatives were on the same side as me, but as if they didn't want to be told anything more by my mother-in-law, they just looked at me with pity and ignored my mother-in-law's abusive words. I even wanted to cover my ears and disappear. I've been working hard in my own way, moving around without a break since morning. My back is about to give out. I'm physically exhausted. On top of that, my mother-in-law and I are being sarcastically looked at by my relatives. No one is on my side here. I was tormented by loneliness and tears were about to spill, when suddenly Kima shouted, "Wow, what is this damn disgusting food? You can't make such disgusting food. Is your sense of taste rotten? Plus, the food is not colorful and doesn't look good at all." Kima was smashing my platter of food into pieces with her chopsticks. It was especially the earthquake food that I had been making for a long time and was soaked in the flavors that had been prepared since last night. I put the confirmation in my mouth, spat it out, and dumped the contents into a nearby trash can. Everyone around me was shocked, and I was so shocked that I couldn't move. As the silence continued, only my mother-in-law said, "This daughter-in-law's cooking is really the worst. She deserves to be thrown away. But the platter is gone, so go and make the confirmation again. Next time, I'll make sure everyone enjoys a delicious meal." I was so shocked that I couldn't even stand up. My stomach was bloated and I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. I took a deep breath and calmed myself down, knowing that I had to give the baby oxygen. None of my relatives cared about me. The moment I swallowed my tears to protect myself and my baby and tried to stand up, my mouth opened. My husband appeared there. He seemed stunned by the gloomy atmosphere and didn't know what was going on. "Oh, the monk is here. Let's have him give us some." The relatives and in-laws followed the monk to the funeral. I felt relieved, but at the same time I remembered being told to make the confirmation again. I quietly got up and went to the kitchen and picked up a block of pork belly that was stocked in the freezer. I had spent so much time since yesterday making it so that everyone would say it was delicious and eat it. I couldn't believe that the food I made would be thrown away in the trash like that. Yoshima's mean face. I will never forget it. How could he do something like that to the family he lives with? Tears suddenly started to overflow. The regret and emptiness grew in my heart. The more I thought about giving oxygen to my baby, the shallower my breathing became and the tears wouldn't stop. Shiori, can you tell me what's wrong?" My husband came into the kitchen in between masturbations out of concern for me, and slowly sat me down in a chair and rubbed my back as I was crying. For a while, my voice echoed through the kitchen. In fact, after you went out to pick up the monk, I slowly told my husband the facts as slowly as possible without getting emotional. My husband listened to my words with a serious look of sympathy while hitting my hammer. "I understand. No need to confirm anymore. Let's go. The sutra has already ended." Ichimichi returned to Toishi again. My husband and I joined them. My husband entered the Japanese-style room, following me. "Oh, Takaaki. There's a parasite clinging to your back." No. I wonder if she thinks she's a tragic heroine. What a scheming wife. She can't see the confusion. I want to cut off all ties with her and be free from this wife. My mother-in-law stared at me as if she saw something nasty. My husband lowered his head and continued to listen to his mother-in-law's words quietly. "That's right. Our family is my mother, my brother, and me. There's no point in keeping such a money-grubbing person close to us. Let's get a divorce quickly and make a happy family just for us. Can't you read the atmosphere and get out of here too?" Kima pointed at me and yelled, and started eating the food she had been complaining about earlier. I've reached my limit. I thought I couldn't bear the words of the two of them anymore. My fingertips were trembling and I couldn't hold back the tears. My heart was a mess with anger and sadness. "I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I'm going back to my parents' house." The moment I opened my mouth to leave, my husband said in a calm voice, protecting me with his back, Well, Mom, we're leaving this house. My mother-in-law couldn't hide her surprise at my husband's sudden words. My mother-in-law stared at my husband's face with a stunned expression. With her mouth full of food, my mother-in-law stood up in silence. There was a moment of silence, and then my husband slowly opened his mouth. It's mean. It's bad business for the baby to have my mother and sister there. I don't really want to hear it now. The voices of the two of you. The baby can hear it even when it's in my stomach. Shiori and the baby are the most important family to me. We are leaving the house to protect Shiori and the baby. While her husband is about to leave, her mother-in-law clings to her husband. Wait a minute. Only the daughter-in-law should leave. Takaaki can continue living with our mothers. Just like before they got married. If only this daughter-in-law wasn't there, everyone could live happily. That's right, big brother. Let's continue living a life that everyone envies. We have our father's inheritance. And we have this house. With your brother's income, everyone can continue to live freely. Hearing the words of the distraught mother-in-law and stepmother, the relatives look at each other and start whispering. Wait a minute. Isn't it bad to kick out the daughter-in-law and make Takaaki support themselves? It's really not human. In the first place, it's strange for a grown-up Kasumi to live at home, right? And to have her support. The relatives all look at the mother-in-law and stepmother with cold eyes, and the mother-in-law, who is completely crushed, turns pale and goes quiet. My husband and I took that opportunity to grab our luggage and run out of my parents' house. We headed straight to my parents' house and told my mother everything that had happened. She was patient. There are plenty of rooms in this house, and my mother has been lonely for a long time, so I'm glad you two came. She welcomed us with a kind smile, saying that she doesn't mind if we stay as long as we like. They prepared futons for us in their room, and we finally took a break. I've been moving around since morning and my legs and waist are sore from fatigue. When I lay down, I fell asleep without realizing it. If you're going to be staying here the next day, you'll need to get some luggage from home. I'm going now, but what about you? I was asked, so I decided to go with them. I was worried that I would have to bring a change of clothes because I was only able to take out the bare minimum of valuables, but my husband was with me, so it was okay. When we returned to my parents' house and packed our luggage in our bags, my mother-in-law and mother-in-law came. I don't mind you leaving, but I want your living expenses. Enough for me and Kasumi to live comfortably. Considering Takaaki's salary, it's money. The photos of the food I uploaded yesterday were criticized by my followers on social media for looking poor. We're going to a high-end French restaurant, so the two of them hold out their hands with a defiant look on their faces. I was stunned by the way they wrote, as if to say, what's wrong with that? My husband started to talk. I quit my job a long time ago. I got sick and now I'm just working part-time at a friend's company, so it was Shiori who was paying for my mother and Kasumi's living expenses until now. My earnings were not even enough to cover the heating bills. My mother-in-law and my mother-in-law stood there in shock, their mouths wide open, at my husband's sudden confession. The life they thought they were living off of their husband was actually supported by the salary of their daughter-in-law, who was bullying them to the max. But my mother-in-law wouldn't give in to that. Well, but this house is my property, so if you think of it as letting them live there for free, it's only natural that I should pay for living expenses. In fact, it's not enough. My mother-in-law's confident words made my brother-in-law look more confident. Well, then we can just pay it back this month as the rent for Creebane. If we put all that money into our living expenses, we can be more luxurious than we are now. The two of them are holding hands and are happy. However, my husband didn't know that the house was in my name. Before my father died, my mother thought that she might sell the house because she couldn't manage the money anyway. That's why she changed it to my name. My mother-in-law and brother-in-law's faces suddenly turned pale. Even though he thought he inherited the land from his father, it was already his son's. My mother, unable to accept that fact, suddenly changed her attitude and said, "Well, then at least let me live in this house. I don't mind living with Shio-san. Even if you can't give me money in cash, if you live together, it's enough if you cook meals for us." Quote. My husband and I were shocked at how shameless they were trying to get things done even after all this. You said you wanted to cut off ties with your wicked wife who restricts your husband. I won't be giving you any support. I have no intention of giving you a single dollar. When I said that, my mother-in-law closed her mouth with a sulky look on her face. She still wanted to say something, but I was confident that I could say something back no matter what she said, so I continued to stare at her. Wait a minute. I didn't hear that you quit your job. Because my brother works for a top-class company, I thought it would be okay to have one more child. If you can't be supported, there's no point in clinging to this shabby house. Yoshima let out her true feelings, making me and my husband stunned. My husband said he would only take care of my sister until she found a place to live, but this one word seemed to turn everything upside down. Anyway, this is my house, so you and your mother should leave too. If you want to stay here, you will each have to pay for living expenses, rent, the hot plate for high heat, and share the housework. But neither of them will be able to pay, and they will also push the housework onto Shori. So there will be no more talk. Please leave. The two packed their bags and left the house without a word. A week later, I gave birth to a baby safely. My husband rushed over and was happy with his mother's heart, and I am also happy from the bottom of my heart. A week after my mother-in-law and my ex left the house, I cleaned up the house beautifully. In particular, my mother-in-law's room is always a garbage room, and there are a lot of fallen sweets, lunchboxes, and rotten drinks left in the room. I was told not to enter without permission, so I couldn't do anything, but now that she won't be coming back, I can clean it up freely. Because my husband immediately called a locksmith and replaced all the keyholes, I have the spare, and my mother-in-law and I can no longer stand freely. My husband said that he would be at home with the newborn baby during the day, so he would not make Shori feel anxious about it. My first insemination. My first desire, and I spent a painful hospital stay. And finally, the care of the baby has settled down. 3 days ago. My mother came to visit me, but her smile was not as good as usual. What happened to my mother? She seemed tired. When I asked her, she said, "I'm sorry." Actually, I had kept quiet until now, but after Shiori was hospitalized to give birth, my mother and sister came to visit our house. They even sat on the ground and asked us to let them stay here. Did you really let my mother into your house? Yes. She begged me with tears in her eyes and I couldn't refuse. My mother looked down and cried, shaking her shoulders in regret. I talked to Takaki about it, but Shiori is still 3 and it's a difficult time mentally, so we settled on keeping quiet for a while, but the situation has become more complicated. Actually, my mother stole the title deed to our house without permission and sold it to a real estate agency without permission. I was so shocked by what had happened that I was frozen in place. Isn't it a lie that the house where my parents and I had precious memories was filled? That mother took the title deed without permission? Isn't that theft? I can't believe that she took advantage of people's kindness, stole their things, and even sold the house without permission. Did you ask your mother about the title deed properly? I asked her about it, hoping that she would lie and meet me, but I did. Of course I did. She said she thought it was trash and threw it away. What's worse, the bank book that she had kept with the title deed disappeared, and more than 1 million yen worth of purchases were made with her credit card. I can't believe she would even steal from her own son's wife's parents. I immediately asked my husband to come to my hospital room and told him what had happened. My husband immediately called my mother-in-law. Mom, what is going on? She sold Shiori's mother's house without permission and even her bank book. And she probably stole her credit card and used it without permission. Don't you think that she is doing something terrible as a person? She should just work steadily and live somewhere together. My husband squeezed out the words to his mother-in-law with tears in his eyes and a voice full of anger and sadness. It was the first time I saw her get so angry and emotional. My husband is a man who loves his family very much. If this hadn't happened, I'm sure she would have done something for her mother-in-law and her mother-in-law. However, my mother-in-law should have sold the house and worried about her poor mother rather than worrying about my wife and her mother after she gave birth. They have no money. They don't have a home to live in. If they're family, it's normal for them to help even if they sell the house. She laughs and says that it was the right thing to do to pay the money since they had a lot of space left over anyway. I also bite my lip in frustration when I hear my mother's conversation leaking out. Who could say something like that? And for a thief. That's right. There were a lot of comments saying that Kasumi's new SNS is nice. It's gone viral, so Takaki should take a look at it too. I couldn't believe it, so I asked about Yoshima's SNS account. Then, a post was uploaded with a photo of her parents' house, and it was our new home. In a comment from Yoshima, she said she was happy to be praised for a nice house. The two of them keep repeating unbelievable behavior as people. The whole house is exposed so that anyone can see it as my mother's house. If the neighbors saw it, I would have cried out loud when I saw the screen of my smartphone. All I could do was stroke my mother's back as she cried. My husband immediately hung up the phone and said he was going to the police. I prayed that the house contract would be invalidated, but my mother's penis was stamped on the contract, and I was told that it would be difficult to resolve immediately. The next day, my mother called me and said that the real estate agent had contacted me and asked me to leave by tomorrow. Shiori cried desperately, asking me what to do. I don't know what to do. I've just given birth, so my body doesn't move, and my head doesn't work well because of the nighttime reception. My head was spinning and I was in a state of confusion and I held my head. Then the news started playing on the TV in the hospital room. What was shown was Yoshima's SNS account. When it was sold to the announcer, Yoshima's account was one of the decoy accounts used by a special fraud group that targets the elderly. He had been posting pictures of his old items and claiming to be a self-employed person on social media, but it wasn't for the sake of the giant shadow. He posted a lot of high-end and luxurious items to make the elderly believe that they had a lot of money, and before they knew it, they had broken into their homes and finally robbed them of their homes. It was just like my mother was suspected for the scale of the scam. The number of elderly people living alone is increasing year by year, and it was just when it was being warned about as a new type of scam. Surprisingly, the real estate agent who contacted my mother was also a member of the fraud group, and the moment they opened the house, they were shocked and sold it at a vegetable price, and the owner was given only a pittance. That's right. The elderly people who had their assets stolen all went to the police, but it was too late, and all their rights and land were taken away, and there was no evidence, so they had no choice but to cry. The day finally came when I was in charge. This was also the day my mother had been told by the real estate agent to leave. The real estate agent was also planning to come and change the locks. There was no way they could move in just a few days, so my mother was preparing to move while she was asleep, but the morning came with the house almost untouched. The doorbell rang, and when my mother answered, the real estate agent was being held by the police. My mother-in-law and Yoshima were taken to the police station to be questioned. When Yoshima was being taken away, he loudly said, "I don't know. I have
nothing to do with this. I was not informed of anything, and I cried, but I was arrested as an accomplice." During the interrogation, Yoshima claimed that he had nothing to do with this, but it was also discovered that he was actually dating the leader of the fraud. He believed the leader of the fraud saying that he could only love children from noble families, and was trying to sell his family home. It was discovered that my mother-in-law had been deceived and committed fraud, and she was released immediately. My husband was called many times to come and pick him up. Even on the phone, my mother-in-law defended Yoshima, saying that she couldn't believe that the child she raised had done something like that, and that he must have been deceived by some mistake. However, my husband could no longer accept my mother anymore. "I have to protect Shiori and our newborn child. Now you have to figure out what to do yourself." With that, I pushed her away. It seems that my mother-in-law had been moving from one relative's house to another, but when the news of Yoshima's arrest was reported on the news, rumors spread that her mother, who had helped commit the fraud, was living there, and she was chased away wherever she went. Having lost her home, money, and credibility, my mother-in-law felt lonely and desperate for the first time. Until then, she had been confident that if she said something, people would listen to her, but that was shattered, and she had to face the reality that no one would lend her a hand. Finally, her mother-in-law, who was mentally cornered, was hospitalized. At the same time, Yoshima was sentenced to death by a felony. A few months later, the incident triggered a warning against special frauds using SNS in the area. The experience of my wife and mother was taken up as a model case to prevent similar damage. Naka learned of the punishment for not cherishing her family and indulging in pregnancy and greed, and the downfall of her mother-in-law and Yoshima. Our family and my mother decided to live together in a new house. Taking care of a baby is harder than I thought, so having my mother nearby makes me feel at ease. My mother was originally a caring person, and since my father passed away, I felt like I had lost my soul, so she was happy to take care of me, thinking that she had found a new purpose in life. When I lived with my parents, I was the only one in charge of cleaning, cooking, and meals, and if something happened, I would be scolded. However, in my new life with my mother, they are considerate of my body and prepare nutritious meals for every meal. My husband had also been taken care of until then. I was hired as a full-time employee at a company I know. I never thought that I would be hired by a company that was so understanding about my health, so my husband said he would work even harder and spend his days fulfillingly. There was a fraud case involving my mother-in-law and my mother-in-law, and of course my mother was called to the police and explained the situation, but at that time, the police officer in charge said that it was not necessary to refuse. Please be sure to say that it is not necessary. It's okay. If you say, next time, again, you will be judged as having room to enter, and your push will become stronger and stronger. From then on, my mother-in-law vowed to herself that she would never open the front door for door-to-door salesmen. When the intercom rang, I often heard her firmly say, "No, please go away," through the monitor. She was a diligent mother who repelled door-to-door salesmen just as she had been taught. I watched with a smile. After that, my mother-in-law moved into a nursing home and said that she regretted her behavior up until then. However, neither my husband nor I have any intention of introducing our children to my mother-in-law yet. There is still plenty of time for her to reflect on herself and take a fresh look at herself. She values people and is able to speak and act in a way that makes those around her happy. I secretly hope that she will become one.